Well, Deputy President Paul Mashatile says challenges persist in achieving universal water services, especially in remote parts of our country. Mashatile says it cannot be business as usual when 19% of the rural population still lacks access to reliable water supply and 33% do not even have basic sanitation services. Well, he was speaking during the end of a two-day Water and Sanitation Indaba, convened to address specifically water supply as well as sanitation problems. And for this discussion, we've roped in water and sanitation specialist Lubabalo Luyaba as we look at the outcomes of the water imbizo in addressing the water woes in the country. Lubabalo, great to have you with us. Thank you so much for your time. So quite a necessary indaba on water and sanitation wrapping up yesterday with the ministry there as well as Deputy President assuring us as he ended that gathering that all table proposals as well as plans will be swiftly implemented. Realistically, though, Lubabalo, is this achievable immediately, as it was emphasized that programs had to get underway now and not due to some future time frame?
Good afternoon to yourself, and thank you for having me. I think a lot of tough decisions are going to be made, or are going to have to be made and taken. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a situation where 60% of our municipalities are currently bankrupt or not financially viable. So you have to ask, in instances where that is the reality or where projects are in those specific municipalities, what are we going to sacrifice or what are we going to give up in order for implementation to happen immediately? So I certainly think it's possible, it's definitely necessary, but it's not going to be easy. And a lot of trade-offs are going to have to be made by all concerned. But if you look at the attendees of the Indaba and the spirit of it, the Indaba, and the sense of urgency and the acknowledgement of the need to collaborate rather than pointing fingers, I think we can and we have reason to be optimistic.
Absolutely. But I mean, Lubabalo, I always overemphasize the fact that, our rural areas are still largely left behind on very key developmental plans, like your much needed electrical and even water infrastructure. It's almost as if authorities have forgotten to prioritize these areas, whom at the most have never had a running tap or even a bulb switch on in their homes. So couple that now with the latest climate change effects, you can really see that these areas remain at the highest risk.
No, indeed. We've certainly got challenges with our more rural areas, and not as an excuse, but at a technical level, as you can imagine, the cost of providing the service in rural areas is sometimes slightly higher because of how isolated they are and the costs that are associated with getting the construction companies there, et cetera, et cetera. So it's certainly an area that looked at, and when we look at the levels of backlogs from the recent census 2022, they are most highly concentrated in our more rural areas. So we definitely have an inequality between our rural and our urban centers, but I think a lot of work is underway in this regard. But what really makes it tough, if I'm to be honest, is where there's no economic base or revenue base, the municipality then becomes 100% grant reliant. And with our shrinking fiscus, that means there's less and less money to go around. So I don't know if it's something that we're going to be overcoming in the foreseeable future, but it's certainly a problem that government has highlighted and is not hiding in the reporting of access levels and quality of service to communities.
Let's talk about that foreseeable future, Lubabalo. So the Indaba basically laid bare the insurmountable challenges that are faced by the implementing authorities. President Cyril Ramaphosa called this an emergency as he painted a very bleak picture of South Africa's future water supply. So it's it needs to be quite targeted initiatives that actually need to go towards preparation and also the planning for these projects as well as budget allocation.
No, indeed. I wouldn't say it's insurmountable. I'd say, and I understand. I think a lot of our viewers at home are very frustrated with our government, and we feel that so much more could have been done. But I think one of the things we often don't acknowledge that's unique about the South African government, especially in the water sector, is that the government isn't hiding status quo and how bad things really are. And we've got to appreciate that. And we've got to appreciate the fact that there's an acknowledgement that we are in a state of crisis. I mean, for the president to say that says a lot, because we know of instances where the challenges are denied and people live in a state of delusion.
But these
so
are ongoing challenges, Lubabalo. They didn't start yesterday. They have been part and parcel of our daily lives for a very long time.
No, indeed. And I think look, I think government is trying. And if you look at the extreme measures that are being put in place, it suggests that there's a recognition that status quo and what we've tried to do in the past is simply not going to work going forward. So I think we can take comfort in that, the fact that we're not trying the same solutions as before. Because if we were trying what we've tried yesterday to solve something that we've clearly not been able to solve, then I'd say we're not making progress. But the fact that, government is saying there's a crisis and extreme measures are being put on the table and measures to increase accountability and transparency in all levels of government are being put in place says to me that we may see change. But so the proof will be in the pudding.
Absolutely. So urgent reforms, we need long-term sustainability programs and not to be reactionary only when we face a crisis, Lubabalo. I mean, there is an urgent need as well for more targeted, as I said earlier, targeted collaboration among government entities themselves. I'm sure you heard the preceding, of course, a clip before our interview there. I'm sure you heard the Minister of Electricity also calling for this move to ensure that we don't fix one asset and then forget about the other, causing us to go into a tailspin when everything stops working.
Indeed, one of the areas that's really undermined our progress, which was also discussed at the summit at quite a great level of detail, is what is emerging as the water tanker mafia, if you will, where municipal infrastructure is being sabotaged by individuals who stand to benefit from providing water through water tankers. So I think that characterizes the frustration that you're communicating. But again, I say, when you look at the level of collaboration with the South African Police Service, which incidentally is headed up by the former Minister of Water and Sanitation, who has a unique understanding of the challenges that we face and the urgency of these, I would argue we're in a unique position, and it seems government is not doing business as usual, and there's greater levels of commitment. And I think with our GNU, hate it or love it, there will be greater levels of transparency and accountability even among the politicians. So let's see, let's not lose hope, and let's do our part as citizens and conserve water, use it responsibly, and also hold our elected representatives accountable.
Absolutely. Hopefully, of course, Lubabalo, that Water Services Amendment Bill also seeking to address some of the very issues that we've actually addressed during this interview, as well as those public as well as private partnerships. Thank you so much, Lubabalo, for your input and clarity this afternoon. That is Mr. Lubabalo Mthembu, the water and sanitation specialist on the recently wrapped up Water Indaba.